Hey, hello. So someone emailed me a question about controlling thoughts, and I thought that was, I don't know, it might be too much to respond just through email. So I figured I'd respond through a video. And also because I feel like this is such a weird common belief people have, like you gotta be able to control your thoughts perfectly or just have no thoughts at all. But that's kind of a lot of effort, and we're trying to get back to something that's effortless, like something that's easy and obvious. Because controlling your thoughts is almost like controlling your breathing. It's just another very normal, natural thing you have. And trying to have nothing but good thoughts. The problem with that is, you get tired and you can't always exert effort and control things. So if you have a bad day or something, or you've done something strenuous and you try to relax, and then the bad thoughts come because you're out of energy and you can't quote unquote control the thoughts anymore. And the more you repress something, the more likely you're gonna kind of like binge or have too much of it. Kind of like if you starve yourself, you're gonna end up overeating, or even something as simple as if you try to control your breathing by not breathing, eventually you're gonna start grasping for air. We're not trying to deny a part of how just what a regular person does, and part of being alive is thinking. Thinking happens. We're trying to point to the suffering part of thinking. Thinking is okay. Some people think more than others. Some people love thinking, some people don't. We're not trying to glorify or bastardize thinking. We're just seeing it for what it is. And if you try to ignore or control thoughts, it's a bit tyrannical. It's a lot more useful to really investigate what even is a thought. And to do that, you can't really repress your thoughts. I mean, if you had a certain exercise or meditation, sure, having something that makes you focus on something other than thoughts is very useful. But it can also be useful to just be curious about what a thought is by exploring it directly. And you can't do that if you're ignoring them or even suppressing part of them. You just kind of have to commit on getting the feel of a thought. Like, what even is a thought? Because everyone has thoughts. But don't try to mentally define a thought. Just get the feel of a thought. Just like how uh, touch. I'm trying to grab something that's easy to. Well, it's paper. Like I can try to describe it, but actually touching the paper is a completely different experience than me describing what it feels like. You got all these senses, and thought's just another sense. Like it's kind of boring to describe taste, so like why don't you just grab something and taste it? You got all these senses, and thoughts is almost another sense. You wouldn't want to repress those thoughts, because like I said, when you don't have any more energy, all the things you repress are gonna just resurface. So it's a lot more useful to just spend time and just be curious. Well, what is a thought? Like the actual texture of a thought. The same way if you eat something, you get the texture in your mouth. But thoughts don't really have like a location. You can probably say your head, but is that even true? Even I'm not so sure. But just when a thought comes, just feel it. Like what, not what is a thought and like explain it. Just what does it feel like when you're thinking? What is that? Just get just get intimate with the texture of a thought, and then when you have thoughts, you can just recognize them as, oh, those are just thoughts. Doesn't matter if they're good thoughts or bad thoughts. Just, hey, that's a thought. You can like certain thoughts more or less, in a way. In the same way you can like certain foods more or less. But just be curious about the sense of it, because whether if it's a good taste or a bad taste when it comes to food, you're still getting connected to what the sense of what a taste is. So it's the same with a thought. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It has the same texture because a thought is a thought before you label it good or bad. Just what does a thought it you can boil it down like sensually, like you can just feel like what is a thought, and that's it. You don't care about a good thought or a bad thought. Just really sit down with thoughts and what does it feel like, and get really curious about being able to recognize when there are thoughts here and you don't make that wrong, and you can live while having thoughts but not believing the thoughts, because thoughts are just normal. It's like when you go out and eat in public and people are talking, there's a lot of noise, but you might not even notice the noise because, well, you don't pay attention to it because it's not important. In the same way, if you think a thought's important, you're going to be hyper focused on it. If the thought isn't important, it can just come and go, like as it pleases. Kind of like going back to the breathing example. You just let yourself breathe naturally. If you try to control it, it can be a little awkward. So you can just let thoughts have their own natural rhythm. If you have a lot of thoughts now, that's fine. If you have none, that's fine. So you don't have a preference to a lot of thoughts or no thoughts. Thoughts that you can control or not. Irrelevant. Because it doesn't matter anymore. You're more interested in just living as things are instead of trying to change it in a way where you think it should be like this. Because thoughts are okay. I'm definitely someone that has not many thoughts, but there are other people that have lots of thoughts, and that's also really good. Well, we need thoughts to make things. We probably wouldn't be able to build things without thoughts. Thoughts are extremely useful. But when thoughts become harmful is when they become judgments. Like you're trying to almost quantify someone, like, well, they're a good or bad person. There isn't innately a good or bad person. We have to reason our way, and all reasoning is just a thought. Doesn't mean it's bad to say, hey, this is kind of a not so nice person, and you want to warn your friend to steer clear from them. That's okay. But when you believe a thought like they're a bad person, well, that's just a thought, and you're missing out on the person right in front of you. But it's also very useful to have thoughts, because if I knew someone who had a history of hurting people, I would definitely warn my friends that, hey, you should steer clear of them. So thoughts are just a useful tool, especially for communication. But when it becomes something that's like evaluating people, like, you know what's a really common thing? People like to rate other people, like how pretty they are. That's just a thought. There's no inherent thing that says, oh, this person's this number. It's just a thought that's trying to create a mental system that makes sense. Because it's just that person is just that person as they are. There isn't like a better or worse. It's just that's it. The thoughts are just added layers. It's commentary on reality. You can look at someone and just look. You don't need to go, oh, look, and then that person's this number. Those are just layers of thoughts. It becomes destructive when you believe these thoughts. There's nothing wrong with having those thoughts if you have them, because some people do, some people don't. But we're just here trying to talk about thoughts and just being okay with them and not having to believe them. It's the same with having a thought of, I'm a bad person. It's just a thought. The reality is your actual experience, how you're feeling, and all your senses right here, right now. And if in the moment you're having that thought, that's also a part of your experience. It becomes suffering when you believe that thought. Say, okay, I actually am a bad person because the thought is here. And you believe the thought is true. But if you had a thought that said, I'm an orange, but you're like, that's a dumb thought, and you don't follow it, it's because you don't think it has any value. But the suffering comes when you put a lot of value in thoughts that try to explain who you are or your value. But again, I'm just repeating, these are all just thoughts. None of it's real. They're just thoughts. None of it's true. But I also want to re-emphasize the part where there's nothing wrong with having thoughts. I still have thoughts. Especially when I have to figure something out at work. I gotta think a lot. Or, sometimes I have a disagreement with someone and I use thoughts in a way to reflect on how can I be more honest and connect with this person better. If they're willing to meet me halfway, because sometimes I need to reel myself back and have the thought of, just examining, is this person actually meeting me halfway? And sometimes I do overextend when it comes to trying to relate to people. But that's a me thing. This is completely unrelated to the actual topic, but that's just how thoughts work for me. Anyways, I think that's a decent length to talk about thoughts and just, giving you kind of the pros and cons and how helpful they are, and seeing the parts where it's not helpful, but it's okay to just have thoughts, even the unnecessary and not so great one. All right, so I'm gonna call you an orange, and if you believe that, I don't know, maybe seek some professional help. But yeah, okay, this is probably a really bad joke. Thanks for listening. Bye.